Hello, thanks for being with us. Today, I'd like to talk about lightning. Lightning is an interesting phenomenon. However, it can be seen as a blessing or a curse, depending on each person's relationship to it. If you happen to watch lightning from a distance, it can be exceptionally beautiful. I once had an experience with lightning while driving, where I was in the center of a storm system which was circular in form and was several miles in diameter. My particular location was separate from the storm, although it completely surrounded me, kind of like being in the eye of a tornado. This happened to be one of the most spectacular lightning storms I have ever witnessed, and it was at night, which made it even more brilliant. As I drove on the interstate, the lightning flashed unceasingly, first maybe to my left and then maybe to my right or in front of me, and maybe multiple places all around me at the same time. I could also see it flash in my rearview mirror. During this time, there was never a moment when there were no bursts of light. It was absolutely the most spectacular sight I have ever witnessed in my life. The experience lasted for approximately half an hour, and then the storm slowed in its intensity. I was really disappointed when it stopped, for I had been enjoying it very much. However, if this storm had taken place in my younger days, I would have been horrified beyond belief. I used to be afraid of lightning to some extent until God showed me that He controlled it, and that I didn't need to fear it anymore as long as I had a healthy fear for God Himself. He showed me that He controlled the lightning, so therefore if the lightning struck me, it was only because He allowed it to strike me. So from that time on, I no longer feared it, but have always enjoyed watching it. No, I hadn't been paranoid about it, but I had always watched it with a certain amount of the fearful respect. Fear of lightning is not so unusual for people, and I had some fear of it too. The problem was not that there was a great chance of lightning striking me, but that if it did, it probably wasn't something that I would walk away from. It's kind of like jumping from an airplane and your parachute doesn't open. Not too many people walk away from that either. Of course, there are stories about people being struck by lightning and living through it, maybe just having third-degree burns or something. I knew of an instance where lightning struck at a swimming beach and several people got burns, some of them quite severe. It was a well-documented event and received news coverage in both the newspapers and on television. In this case, the lightning hit and traveled along on top of the ground in the form of little balls of fire. This form of lightning is not completely unusual occurrence, and I've heard of this happening on occasion. But in this particular case, I happen to know some of the people who were present when the lightning struck. One of them told me about it and explained to me that it happened so fast that no one could do anything about it. This person said that many people, both adults and children, were jumping up and down because the bottoms of their feet were being burned. Both grown-ups and children were screaming. They could see the little balls of fire rolling across the beach. I was told that there were several of these balls of fire, and the electrical energy all around was burning some of the people, but not touching others, even though they were in the same vicinity as those who were being burned. It's interesting that the fire of lightning can burn one person and yet leave another person standing next to them completely unscathed. When it comes to lightning, nobody controls it but God. Or maybe I should rephrase that. When it comes to lightning in its pure form, when it strikes from the heavens above, no man can control it. Only God controls the path of lightning. But although the path of lightning is under God's control, man also has some control over it. Since the days of Benjamin Franklin, man has been able to harness this fire from the heavens and redirect the electrical force of it into tools used for man's quest in science and technology. In fact, if this fire of the heavens had not been harnessed by man, you wouldn't be able to listen to the sound of my voice on your radio today. You wouldn't be able to flip the light switch on when you came into a dark room, and you wouldn't be able to warm up your leftovers in the microwave oven. In fact, just think about all the things that have come into existence just because this fire of the heavens was tamed by mankind. Of course, many of these things are wonderful inventions. But on the other hand, not all that is powered by electricity is wonderful. Yes, there are many modern conveniences which make life easier, but there are also many inventions which have been a severe hindrance to the safety of men's souls. Stop and think a moment about what this fire from the heaven has meant for the children of today, who tune in nonstop to television, movies, and rock music from the time they are a year old until they reach adulthood. Think for a moment what yet looms on the horizon of science and technology, which has only been made possible by the harnessing of electricity. Sure, some of the inventions which have sprung out of this scientific effort seem to be beneficial, but much of the use of electricity only has purpose in allowing man to get more things from the world than they used to get in the days of the horse and buggy. I guess the bottom line concerning the pros and cons of electricity can best be assessed by realizing that electricity has created a world-class society, and that this world-class society has brought all the people of the world much closer together. And this has resulted in a united world effort to establish the glory of man. Prior to this last century, this had not happened in all the history of the world since the days of the Tower of Babel. In those days, according to the book of Genesis, God had come down to see the tower which the people of earth were building and to assess the situation. What God saw was an industrious nation of people. He saw technology beginning to grow. Even though we might not consider the technology of that age to be very significant, God said it was significant. He said that after what he had seen, he knew that man would be able to accomplish anything that he could conceive of in his mind. Therefore, God confused the language of the people and caused them to be scattered throughout the earth. Personally, I believe God knew what he was doing. But why? What did God see that was so wrong? Here was a people who, like I said, were industrious. They were working on building tall buildings. They had begun to burn the bricks of clay so that they would be more firm and thus be able to support more weight for a higher structure. After all, isn't that pretty much the same thing that we're doing in this present age? Isn't that what science and technology is all about? But God did find the situation to be displeasing to him. The people were not being industrious in order to find more ways to glorify God, but were striving to exalt their own existence and were intent on making a name for themselves. They wanted to use their own might and power to exalt themselves up to the heights of heaven rather than to be scattered throughout the earth. They wanted to be somebody in themselves instead of wanting to live for God and to glorify him.